Good morning. And let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. Great. Welcome to our 9:30 Bible class here at the North Lexington Church of Christ. We're so glad to have you. This is a special day. We have a special speaker for our Bible class. President David Shannon from Freed-Hardeman University in Henderson, Tennessee, is visiting with us today, along with a number of Freed-Hardeman representatives, including past president Dr. Milton Sewell is here, and his wife Laurel, and others that you'll get to meet. They are on what's called a presidential trek, and Freed-Hardeman does this frequently on Sundays, weekends, going out to let people know more about the school, and they've decided to come to North Lexington today, and we've been trying to do this for 3 or 4 years, so this is very exciting. It's the Lord's Day, and that's the reason we're assembled, is to worship, but it's always nice to have guests. And we're very excited to have David Shannon speak to us during the Bible study hour, and also at worship he'll be preaching. David Shannon is formerly the preacher for the Mount Juliet Church just to the east of Nashville, and many of us know him, remember him in that role because he came and spoke at North Lexington. He's spoken at many conferences and youth rallies, and so well known for his preaching ability. He's an outstanding gospel preacher. Then he was asked to assume the role of the presidency at Freed-Hardeman, and the work that he has done for the school, even in a short time, is nothing short of outstanding as the school is growing, and a lot of that's because of the work that David Shannon is putting in, which is not a surprise to those of us that know him and know the solid gospel preacher he was and what he brought to the presidency from his past experiences. So we're so very glad, David, that you're here at North Lexington again. Welcome, and we look forward to your lesson now. Thank you.
Good morning. It is so good to be at North Lexington. It's good anytime you're at North Lexington. I appreciate so much through the years the opportunity to visit with you and be a part of whatever is happening that particular day at North Lexington. When you walk into a congregation, you can tell whether or not the congregation is healthy, if it's vibrant, if it's zealous. And every time I've been to North Lexington, I've experienced that. And now when I know that I'm having the opportunity to go back, I really look forward to that. And so it's good to be with you on this Lord's Day. Allow me to share about 5 minutes or so of some things about Freed-Hardeman, and then we're going to go into a study of Proverbs, if you want to be thinking or turning there about Proverbs. I bring you greetings this morning from Freed-Hardeman University. Of the 14 institutions of higher learning associated with the Churches of Christ, Freed-Hardeman is the oldest. We began in 1869, and we're just this semester finishing up our 151st year at Freed-Hardeman. And it has been a really, really tremendous year, even in spite of some of the challenges and obstacles that all of us across the world have faced. You know, when we think about Freed-Hardeman, we really do have a mission statement that we live by. It's not just a piece of paper on a wall. It's not just some fancy words crafted together that are forgotten. But our mission every day that we get up is to help students develop. Notice we can't do it for them. We can just help them. We can help students develop their God-given talent for His glory. Now, how do we do this? We do it by empowering them with education. Education's powerful. We do it by empowering them with an education that integrates 3 things: the Christian faith, scholarship, and service. And so we're thankful every day to have that opportunity to do this with just some amazing young people that come from all across the United States. We usually have, any given year, at least students from over 30 states, from both coasts, borders all around, and then 10, 12, 15 countries, depending on the given year. I'll show you a picture that is so common to you guys with snow on the ground, but one thing that doesn't happen more than about once every 10 years is for West Tennessee to have a snow that lasts a week on the ground. And so we really enjoyed this time, this winter, just a few months ago. We enjoyed this time together, and of course our students loved it because it's unusual for us at Freed-Hardeman, and we enjoyed that time together. Let me back up to August. Even though it was in the midst of the pandemic, we were blessed richly by God to be able to open up in the fall, classes in person, students living in the dorm. And even though we did have some restrictions, we were able to enjoy a semester that in many ways was relatively normal. In other ways, it wasn't normal at all, but it was really great. And we actually set many institutional highs as we began this academic year. We had a record enrollment of 2188. We had a record undergraduate enrollment of 1727. We had a record dual enrollment of 346. And we had a record graduation rate of 65%. And one reason, of course, it's kind of common sense, but the only way your graduation rate can continue to climb is that retention rate each year has to also continue to climb. And we've been really blessed over the last few years with a continual climbing in retention rates. As a matter of fact, even over COVID, from fall to this spring, we had a retention rate of 95% coming back this spring, which is just really a tremendous blessing. But even this spring semester, all of these on the first column is what we're experiencing this semester, and the column to the right is last year at the same time. And so I won't read through all those, but again, most of those are record highs, and they're quite a bit greater than even last year. And we give God the glory for this. He just continually blesses us. And students, so many of our students come from just really, really good families, good church families. When Bart, I appreciate the introduction, and when he mentioned the fact that we go out and travel on Sundays and we visit churches, we do that for many reasons. It's not just for prospective students, and a lot of people think it is. I don't have time to explain to you all the reasons. There's a lot more ripples than that. But yeah, it is for prospective students because 83% of our enrollment are members of the Church of Christ. So we know where our future enrollment, we know where they are on Sundays, and we know where they are on Wednesday nights. So yeah, we love to visit churches so that we can find young people that they want Christian education. That's the two words that best describe us, Christian education. And let me, if I could, just for a minute, I want to speak to a myth that I want to first say I understand if someone believes this. I'm not like criticizing if someone believes this myth, and I say that vaguely, like it's not someone, it's a lot of people. I would think the majority of people believe the myth that, okay, if I go to Freed-Hardeman, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a great spiritual foundation that's going to be strengthened, but I'm going to have to give up a little bit in academic excellence to be able to do that. And I just want to help you bust that myth to realize that that's not the case. And I'm not trying to criticize, large public schools. I know that students can go there and they can do really well there. I'm not criticizing the education there, but I just want to help you realize that if you think a student has an advantage because they go to a big public school, the data just does not prove that. As a matter of fact, let me give you just a few, and I want to give you facts so that you don't say, well, he's just biased. For example, our nursing students that graduated this past year, all of them have to take an NCLEX to become a registered nurse. And all colleges across America are graded on the first rate, the first time pass of taking the NCLEX. And this year, out of 51 institutions of higher learning in the state of Tennessee, there was only one in the state of Tennessee. Now think about it. We got the Big Orange, we got the Big Blue in Memphis, we got Vanderbilt, we have all these schools across Memphis. There's only one that had a 100% pass rate on a BSN in nursing out of 51, and it's Freed-Hardeman University. As a matter of fact, in your state, there's only one college in your state that has a 100% pass rate last year also, and it wasn't the Big Red or the Big Blue here. And so the idea that says, I've got to be able to have this big university to have success, it's not the case. Yes, you can have success there, but the data would prove that you would have a greater opportunity. Just like our acceptance rate into med school is going to be much higher than the other schools we've talked about. Acceptance rate into pharmacy, well, you just name any of the colleges. Most of ours is 100%. Pharmaceutical schools, 99%. Med school, veterinarian schools, and 91% for Freed-Hardeman. The national average is in the 60s on those. And our college of business, I'll give you another fact here and we'll move on. Like in college business, we have a test that all of our graduates take that 500 other universities across America participate in the same test. We score in the top 93 percentile every year in this test. Our accounting graduates finish in the top 1 percentile in the accounting portion of that test. Our finance graduates finish in the top 1% of the finance. This is a picture of our team last year, the First Bank investment team. Those students, they managed a real $1 million. And you can imagine when you go out to get a job and it's on your resume that you've already managed $1 million, and you can show your results that you outperform the professionals each year. It's pretty impressive. Those individuals never, ever have a problem getting a job because they're so far ahead of the competition. U.S. News and World Reports, they release every year a rankings of colleges across America. All universities are ranked. And of the South, so from Texas over to the coast, all of the South, we rank number 8 as the best value. And what that does is measures 3 things. It measures the academic excellence, and then it measures cost, and then the need-based aid given to students with the highest need. And that metrics brought together, we rank 8 out of all of the South for regional schools. We're glad to be in Dixon. We're glad to be in Belgium. Our students love spending a semester in Europe and traveling around. We're glad to be in Memphis, but you probably know us best being in Henderson, Tennessee. This is just a portion of the campus. We would love for you to come and visit. First week in February, we have just an amazing lectureship. It's like a big reunion for the Brotherhood. It's probably the second largest gathering of the Brotherhood every year across America. There's usually about 3,000 in addition to all of our students in attendance, and we'd love to have you. Hundreds of sessions to take part in. So mark your calendar sometime and come down and spend a week with us. First week in February. Making music's a big deal. If you don't know anything about it, it's kind of crazy to describe. It's all student-led, and it is an amazing, fun opportunity. We just had this past week. Zakai, hats off to them. They won first place. And Horizons takes place in the summertime. It's 6th through 12th graders. When it's not a COVID-impacted year, we have 971 in attendance and then a waiting list. But it is really a tremendous time to grow spiritually for junior high and high school. And so if you don't know about that and you have children or grandchildren that are in junior high and high school, be sure and ask about that. It can really change their lives. We also have a Mid-South Youth Camp that has 8 sessions every summer, June and July. And this is the dining hall that's under construction right now. And as improvements continue to be made to this camp that's been in existence for a long time and doing a lot of good. We're thankful to be here today. And there are several from Freed-Hardeman here today. There's probably about 10. And we're here just to connect with you. We'd like to answer any questions that you might have and visit with you. And we want to be the best resource to the church that we can possibly be. It's important to us that we see the kingdom grow because of our efforts. You ever wondered why people don't like you? That's kind of bold to say, isn't it? I want us to think for just a few minutes from something much higher than earthly wisdom. I want us to think about heavenly wisdom that could really give us insight to better live our lives. I love the story about the little boy who was crossing the street on his way to the barber shop, and the barber looks out and he sees the little boy approaching and he says, guys, watch this. This is the dumbest kid in town. Watch this. He does this every day. Watch this. The little boy comes in. He greets everyone very nicely, and as he does, the barber turns back to the cash drawer and he brings out 2 quarters and $1. And he says, son, come over here. He says, pick one. Which one do you want? The little boy takes the 2 quarters. He says, thank you, sir. And he speaks to everyone on the way out, and as the door closes behind him, the barber bursts out. See, guys, told you, dumbest kid in town. Comes in here every day and takes 2 quarters over $1. How dumb can you get? Well, one of the customers finished up his haircut, walking back through town, and he saw a little boy sitting in front of the ice cream shop. And he was licking on his ice cream, and he said, son, I've just got to ask you. He says, curiosity gets me. Why do you choose the 2 quarters every day? Little boy smiles, licking on his cone. He says, sir, the day I take $1, the game's over. Isn't it amazing? Now, I want you for just a moment, I want you to think about that story. Now I want you to think about your reaction to that story. Isn't it amazing how you hear it and you're like, yes, that little boy. You know, have you ever noticed that's the way true wisdom is? True wisdom is It's one of those things that a lot of the time we would never think about it if it's just up to our human nature. But when it's revealed to us, we have that moment of, yes, that's so true. Wisdom is usually conveyed in short, pithy sayings. It's sayings that get right to the point. It's sayings that brings in knowledge, understanding to better help us with discernment. That's my definition of wisdom after I study through the book of Proverbs. And what's neat is God, out of the 66 books in the Bible, He sprinkles wisdom all through the entire Bible, but He takes one particular book and He says, I'm going to pause right here and I'm going to give you an entire book about wisdom. Now, I feel like I need to press pause here for just a moment and insert something that's just a point of clarity. You know, there's some people that think wisdom comes from living life, experience, and common sense. Now, there's no doubt that living life we gain experience, and there's no doubt that common sense makes life better. But I want you to realize we're not talking about that today. There are many old people that have common sense and they have life experience, and based on what we're studying today, they're still very foolish. Because we're talking about something by human nature we don't have. We're talking about James 3 type of instruction here. You know, the last paragraph of James 3 talks about two kinds of wisdom. It talks about a wisdom that is from the earth, and then it talks about a wisdom that is from above. Remember when I said that the wisdom we're studying is knowledge? It's knowledge from God that helps us to better understand what's happening around us so that we can bring our opportunity to intermingle with whatever is that we're understanding around us, to bring God's knowledge into place. And the discernment is being able to bring that knowledge into life. And it's really amazing. It makes all the difference in the world. And so we got this book of Proverbs, and isn't it nice that it coincides with the days of the month? Isn't that neat? You can read one chapter of Proverbs every day, and you just think, what day is it on the calendar? There's 31 chapters in Proverbs, and a lot of months have 31 days during the month. And so every day you can put aside just an extra 5-6 minutes, and you can read an entire chapter in Proverbs. And if you don't do that, that's my challenge. That's my hope, is that for the next year you would read a chapter of Proverbs every day, in addition to whatever else you study in your daily Bible reading and your daily studies. And so as we think about this, we're going to take this from just a very focused, topical approach, in the sense, years ago I read a book by Tommy Nelson, and it was about succeeding in life. And he just had like 2 pages in this book where he just listed a lot of Proverbs, and he listed it under this heading. And what he was doing was talking about in life, if you want to be successful, you can't be very successful if people don't like being around you. In other words, you ought to be a blessing to people you're around. You ought to not be a burden to people you're around. And so in this, he just laid out several Proverbs, and it really got me thinking. I thought, wow, that's a neat approach. Like, how can I look at Proverbs and learn what are things that I would do by human nature that when I do them, it doesn't bless relationships around me. It actually causes people to think, ooh, I'm glad they're leaving, instead of I'm glad they're coming. And so let's think about this. And by the way, we can look at 20 reasons, but we can't do it this morning, okay? So what we'll do is we'll talk about like 5, 6, 7, and then I'll just quickly flip through the end to show you 20. But I mean, really, we could do 40. We could do more than that. What's neat is I've also done lessons where, hey, here's 30 reasons why people like you. And all of this is out of Proverbs. And so it's just a neat study to read Proverbs and think, how can I be a blessing to others if I live out these? So let's think about reasons maybe why people don't like you. Number one, people might not like us if you are a loner. Now, as we read this, Proverbs 18 chapter and verse 1, I guess all of these will come out of the New King James Version this morning. He says, a man who isolates himself seeks his own desire. He rages against all wise judgment. Now, all of us in this room probably are either we're introverts or extroverts, and I just want you to know that's not what Proverbs is talking about here. He's not saying if you're an introvert, you're a foolish person. He's not saying that at all. As a matter of fact, he very clearly states when someone in this situation chooses to live in isolation, he states why. It's not just because of their personality. Notice he said it there. What is it? A man who isolates himself does what? Seeks his own desire. In other words, he says, there's some people that live in isolation of other people, and there's only one reason why they do it. They're selfish. They want to be able to live life on their terms. Have you ever thought about the fact that the more relationships you have with others, the more you're giving up of yourself? Every healthy relationship involves you giving up of yourself to share in that relationship. And so some people have figured out, you know what? If I don't make myself available to other people, I get every evening to myself. If I don't make myself available to other people, I get weekends to myself. How many dads and husbands come in the evening and they have their family trained to not expect anything of them? Because then they can do everything they want that evening. It's sheer selfishness. Weekends, they can do whatever they want. They can golf, hunt every weekend because everybody knows I isolate myself. I do what I want to do with my time. When someone in this circle has to make a rush to the emergency room to take one of their children that's just fallen and they have to have stitches and they need to drop off 2 other children somewhere, who are they going to call? They're not going to call this person that isolates themselves. They're naturally going to call someone and say, hey, I know this is kind of crazy. Can I drop my kids off right now? We're on the way to the hospital. I'm just trying to think of someone that would help me in this bind. Who asks someone to say, hey, we're going to be moving Saturday. Do you think you could come by Saturday morning and help us move? You ever heard someone say, oh, I don't do weddings? Why? Be honest. I don't want to give up my time. Yeah, I don't go to many funerals. Why? I don't want to give up my time. Someone who isolates themselves, this isn't me. This is from God. This is heavenly wisdom. He says, sure, they're isolated. And they're isolated by choice because they had this selfish desire to take control of their own life and only use it the way they want to use it. Now, notice, most Proverbs are written 2-part. And so if you didn't get enough emphasis with the first, usually the proverb writer will flip it over and emphasize it. So notice how he closes this with emphasis. With emphasis is, he rages. He rages. This isn't some little thing. Oh, you shouldn't have done that. People that do this rage against all wise judgment. We are made for relationships. We are made to bless other people. Do you realize God did not give you one blessing that you should hoard? If He gave you health, you ought to share it in serving others. If He gives you time, you ought to use it in serving others. If He gives you abilities, you ought to use it in serving others. If He has given you money and resources, you ought to use it to serve others. Everything that God gives, you can isolate it, you can keep it, and you can rage against all wisdom. Or you can say, I love others. Second greatest commandment, I love others. Number 2, are you a bad listener? Proverbs 18th chapter and verse 13 says, he who answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly. Notice that word foolishness there? It's folly and shame to him. Have you ever been talking to someone and you really need to share details with them? I'm not talking about just a casual conversation. You're trying to instruct them, you're trying to give them details, and it dawns on you like you're looking at their nonverbal communication, you realize they've stopped listening, and as a matter of fact, their mouth's already like all they're doing is waiting for you to take a breath, and they're about to say what's ever on their mind, right? And I have been so tempted, and one of these days I might get enough courage to try this. When someone starts doing that, I want to just stop talking anything that makes sense and see how long it takes them to realize they're not listening at all. Like when you see people doing that, and you can tell they're zoned out, and they're just waiting. What if you just went into the alphabet? A, B, C, D. How far would you go in the alphabet before they'd realize, what are you doing? Just seeing how long it takes you to start listening again. All right, how foolish is that? How foolish is it when parents stop listening to children? How foolish is it when spouses stop listening to each other? How foolish it is when an employee stops listening to an employer, or an employer stops listening to employees. How foolish is it when elders stop listening to the flock? How foolish is it when friends stop listening to each other? There's no exception in a relationship what we owe to the other is enough humility to say what is on your mind, it's worth listening to. I want to take time to listen to you. It's a folly and a shame when we are so arrogant that we don't think we owe it to the other person to listen to them. It's an element of respect and love for others. Do you tell all you know? In Proverbs, the 12th chapter, verse 23 says, a prudent man, and by the way, what's the definition of prudent man? A real simple definition of prudence, especially as we think about wisdom, is that it's based off making decisions looking long-term versus short-term. That's a major part of defining prudence. People that are prudent, they don't just make emotional and immediate decisions. They think, how's this going to impact long-term? And they make decisions. So think about a prudent man, someone that's looking beyond the moment. A prudent person conceals knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaims what? Foolishness. You know, there are so many things that we are going to learn in life. Either we saw it happen, somebody told it to us, and it could be true. You know, sometimes people say, oh, it's not gossip if it's true. Well, that's not true. There are going to be many, many things, probably on a daily basis, that you and I learn because we've observed it, we've heard it, that really there's no reason to ever talk about it. And that's a big difference in people that are wise, heavenly wisdom, and people that are foolish. You know, just because you're in a conversation and someone's name comes up, and you know a lot of things about their past, that'd be a real good time to say, I'm going to be prudent. I'm going to conceal that knowledge. There's no reason for me to stand in this circle and tell you everything I know about their past that may not be of benefit to them for you to learn that. We think about the power we have to literally deal with knowledge. Knowledge is a resource. What are we going to do with it? I want to encourage us to realize that there are a lot of things we ought to be really comfortable going to our grave, saying, just because I know it, I won't ever speak of that. Now, there's some people, their mind works just the opposite. Right when they see something happen, it's like a Rolodex in their mind. They're already thinking about the next time I run into so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, I can't wait to tell them about what I just saw. I can't wait to tell them about what I just heard. They're not going to believe this. And even though that person can be very popular, you know what you'll hear people say about that person? I love to talk to them. They always catch me up on everything. Well, that doesn't work long term. That's not prudent. Long term, that hurts and harms a lot of relationships. I know this one in Proverbs. I couldn't pass on this one, okay? Matthew, the 5th chapter, as you know, probably is the Sermon on the Mount. And you know that Jesus began that sermon with the Beatitudes. And let's think about whether or not we're argumentative. You know, if that describes us, it's hard to like someone that they always are creating a friction. They're creating conflict around. And so I love Jesus' words here where he says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. So now let's think about it. In other words, the Father has characteristics about him that when people are following his wisdom, the Father's wisdom, they're going to look like their Father. And so they're going to be called the children of God. Now, of all the ways that can be described in Scripture, isn't it interesting that this is one of the areas where he says, oh, it's peacemaking. In other words, you just don't see this kind of behavior from people that live by an earthly wisdom. You only see this kind of behavior with people who live by a heavenly wisdom. Well, what is peacemaking? Well, we could transpose the words there. It's to make peace. What we probably defeat our best understanding is whenever we start saying things like we look at a family and maybe that family just seems to always be peaceful. And we just say, we discount it. Yeah, it just runs in their family. Or you see a family that they regularly struggle with great conflict. And you just dismiss it like, yeah, that family's just always been that way. Well, no. Let's just dissect this a little bit. There's a reason. God would teach us, Christ would teach us right here that when you see a family that enjoys peace, it's because there are peace makers in that family. You realize this, peace is not a trait in someone's DNA. Like, peace is not evolutionary. Oh, it just happened. I don't know how it happened. You know, you guys have beautiful furniture here. What if I told you no one made this? It just happened. You know, you would say that's ridiculous. It literally shows design. Someone made this. It was a furniture maker. Blessed are the peace makers. Your pew you're sitting in was made by a maker of pews. You'll go home to your kitchen. You'll look at the cabinets. They were made by a cabinet maker. People that enjoy peace in their life, they decided to make peace. And the only way we can do that is we have to stop demanding our rights. This really goes against our United States of America citizen. And I demand my rights. Well, granted, there are rights that we have, but you got to prioritize them. If you demand your right every time it's your right, you'll have very little peace in your life. And there's going to be a lot of times where it requires 100% unselfishness to say, you know, at this moment, this is what I would want to demand. I might even have the right to demand it. But you know what? In an effort to make peace with you, I'll forfeit my right so that we can have peace. I'm not saying to you peace trumps everything. In other words, which is more important, truth or peace? See, that's real easy to answer. Truth always trumps peace. But is peace important? Yes, peace is important. Let me give you an illustration. And the only way I want to give you this illustration is put a strong disclaimer on the front. It's not like, okay, this is what this whole point's about, because this literally comes into every little aspect of our life. But a quick way to illustrate this is, I want you to think about you're driving home, and you're in your lane. You haven't changed lanes. You're driving a safe distance from the car in front of you, and all of a sudden you realize this person in your left lane to the left of you is about to cut you off, and they are going to make their way into that space that really there's not enough space right now, but they're going to make their way into that. And what is it? It's your right of way. You're in that lane, it's your right of way. And you get to make a decision just like that. You can make the decision to not create peace. And so when they make their way in, you ride their bumper about this far off, and every time they stare in their rear view, you glare back at them, and you follow them for the next 5 miles, going beyond where you were going to turn off, because you just want to make a point. Not just a point. You want to make conflict. Now rewind. What about when they're coming in? Obviously, you're human. It flashes through your mind. They shouldn't be doing that. So at that moment, what can you make? Make. You have to do something. You know what? I'm going to tap my brakes. I'm going to give them sufficient room to get in. I'm going to stay off their bumper to make sure they know that I want peace in this situation. Literally in that moment, you either make peace or you don't make peace. You know, through the years, especially in full-time ministry, I did a lot of premarital counseling. For probably about 20 years, there was hardly ever a time in my life I wasn't doing premarital counseling, usually several sessions a week. And I always would think about when the holidays were approaching and all those newlyweds that have just been married earlier that year. And I couldn't help but smile and feel a little bit sorry for them, because before they got married, Thanksgiving and Christmas was always awesome. And then you get married, and you know what you figure out? We've got to blend a lot of family get-togethers into some really strong traditions. And a lot of the time, that just doesn't go so well. And so, you know, it's somewhere in late October, early November, this little naive young couple that's just gotten married, and everything's going to be so exciting, their first holiday, and it dawns on them. We both eat at noon at our parents' house at Thanksgiving. And so they talk among themselves, what do you think we're going to do? And so I said, well, let's just call Mom. Let's see what Mom says. And so one of them says, okay, I'll call first. And so they call and say, Mom, we're married now. And we're just trying to figure out Thanksgiving schedule. No big deal here. No big deal. That's a lie. And we're just trying to figure it out, Mom. We wanted to talk with you a little bit and see maybe if we could maybe go a little bit earlier in the day, or maybe go a little bit later, maybe even move it to Friday. Just want to check with you, Mom. And Mom pops the top. No. In this family, we've been eating Thanksgiving at noon for decades, and you're a part of this family, and this family will be here, and there's no other discussion on this. We'll see you noon, Thanksgiving Day. Bye. And so now there's tears in the corner, and spouses look over at each other, and it's like, that didn't go at all like we thought it would. What are we going to do? The other one says, well, let me call my mom. Mom, what? We can't be at two places one time. We're just trying to figure this out, Mom. We don't know exactly what to do. Oh, honey, listen, it's not about the moment. It's about family getting together. What do we need to do? Do we need to have a breakfast? Do we need to have a dinner? Do we need to do it on Friday? What do we need to do? And we'll get with everybody and we'll make it work. Don't stress about this. Hang up the phone. They look at each other and they say, I'm so thankful for her. Why? You can't help but love peacemakers because they remind you of their Father. No one does that by earthly nature. The only reason people constantly give up of themselves, they give up of their traditions, they give up of their first priority to make something easier, more peaceful for someone else, is because of their Father. Think what our Father gave up for us to have peace with Him. It's really, really amazing. Okay, as we think about our Father making peace with us and we think about forgiveness, let's think about this one before we kind of start wrapping this lesson up. Are you unforgiving? Proverbs 20th chapter and verse 3 says, it is honorable for a man to stop striving. Since, I love the way he says this so bluntly, since any fool can start a quarrel. Think about it. You don't have to do anything intentionally to start a quarrel. Quarrels are so easy to start because by nature we just disagree with each other. That's part of our being a human. We have different opinions, but also we're all flawed. You're an imperfect person married to an imperfect person that has imperfect children, that has imperfect neighbors, that has imperfect employees, co-workers, everybody around. And so there's plenty of opportunities to point to someone and say, you did something wrong. Well, when we look at this and we say, okay, any fool can start strife. The real challenge is once it's happened. The one we just talked about was peacemaking. Sometimes we can't stop all conflict. And so now we're in the midst of conflict. So now the question is, while we're in the midst of conflict, do we have the wisdom that's required to end the conflict? And we could come at this from different angles, but for time's sake, just let me come at this angle. When's the last time you've said to someone genuinely, no excuses, straightforward, I'm sorry, I was wrong? I'm going to give you a minute to think about that so you can remember. When's the last time you have said to someone, no excuses, I'm sorry, I was wrong? You say, well, last week, last month, last 6 months. Now, if you can say, I haven't said that to anybody in the last 6 months, you realize you are the only one on this earth that thinks you're perfect. Like everybody you live with, they know that you've made mistakes the last 6 months. All your coworkers, they know that you've made mistakes the last 6 months. And so I just want to urge you to realize, like, if you haven't bought into this fact that you're imperfect and that's something you owe to people when you do things that are wrong, that hurt them, that harm them, that simply it's not right, you should seek forgiveness. You should own it. You should confess it. And you you should ask them to forgive you. As a matter of fact, according to wisdom from above, it is the honorable way to stop strife. Any fool can get into strife and keep strife going. But it takes someone honorable to say, I want to end this. I'm sorry for whatever my role has been in this. And I want to move this forward. And you know, it sounds like something we hear said at church sometime, but I hope you've lived long enough to know it's not just a church saying. It's sad, the people that let unforgiven trespasses go for generations. And they let funerals take place where wrongs have never been made right. And instead of going to that extreme, what we ought to have is the idea that says we don't want the sun to go down upon the times that we are wrong. So I hope you'll give that a lot of thought, because it's against our human nature. We're not talking about anything today that you would do naturally just because you're a good person. We're talking about things today the only way we would do them if we were committed to living from wisdom from above. Okay, so in this last couple minutes, let me just flip through really quick. Like, do you cut other people down? Proverbs 12 and 18 talks about how, like, our words, foolish words, are like sword cuts that just hurts, harms people. The seventh one is, do you have uncontrolled anger? Proverbs 19:19 speaks very clearly of the danger of not being able to control your temper. And again, you can't pull the old DNA card. Well, that's just like my family. That's just like my daddy. Listen, that's a lie. You have decided to live by a standard that's less from above. Godly wisdom does not allow us to live uncontrolled lives. Everybody in this room has the ability to control their temper. Everybody in this room. And so we just have to decide if we're going to be wise or not. Eighth, are you too blunt? Proverbs 29:11, a fool vents, how much? All of his feelings. You ever heard people say, yeah, if you know me, you're going to know what I feel. Okay. If I know Proverbs, you just described yourself as a fool. Because you're going to feel things every day. Matter of fact, you're probably going to have hundreds of feelings every day. There's no reason for you to voice them. We all are imperfect, and we have all kinds of feelings that we just need to suppress them. We need to work through them, and we need to think clearly, and we need to move forward. But, that's a problem with some. I'm not by any means saying all of social media is bad, but a lot of social media is because people feel like that's a great place to vent all of their feelings, and it's just not. Do you drop the ball? Proverbs 10:26 gives clear instruction about how foolish we are if we depend on people that are not responsible. 10, are you inflexible and controlling? Proverbs 14:4. 11, do you make fun of people? Proverbs 17:5. And keep in mind, he teaches there, if we make fun of people, God says, you're making fun of my creation. 12, are you a mooch? Proverbs 30:15. The leech has two daughters, give and give. A guy come up to me after this lesson one time, and he says, my last name is Leach. I have two daughters, and all they ask is for me to give and give. It was funny. All right, 13, can you not keep a secret? Proverbs 11:13. 14, are you unsympathetic? Proverbs 25:20. Are you a selfish person? Proverbs 11:26. Do you make false promises? Proverbs 25:14. Are you an offensive person? Proverbs 18:19. Do you have a critical spirit? Proverbs 16:21. Are you rude? Proverbs 18:23. You know, when we have the opportunity to, let me go a little further here. Are you, some way the numbering was off there. Are you loud in the mornings? Is that time? Okay. Proverbs 27:14 says, he who blesses his friend with a loud voice rising early in the morning, it will be counted a curse to him. My dad read Proverbs every day for most of his life. My sister and I, we heard Proverbs just spoken in conversation all throughout our life, because the idea was just to live a life of wisdom. And my dad was a farmer. He rose early in the mornings. He went to bed usually about 8 o'clock at night. I was a teenager. I was lying in bed one night, and I was reading my Bible before I went to bed. And a rarity was that my dad would not be at home when I was going to bed, but he wasn't that night. Before answering machines, before cell phones, and I read Proverbs 27:14. The reason that verse was so important was my dad always woke up in the morning thinking the best time of the day was like 4:30 in the morning. And he was loud in the house. When he'd come to wake you up, he always wanted to talk about everything. And he was just all wide awake. And, I'd be like, Dad, can we talk about this a little later? And so I read this verse, and I thought, this is too good to be true, because this is my dad's book in the Bible. And this is what he lives by. And, this is what he's really guilty of. And so, that place, if you're as old as I am, you had that one place in the house you went and wrote notes to each other. So when you came in, everybody checked there to see what they needed to catch up on. So I just got up out of bed, and I went, and I said, Dad, you need to read Proverbs 27:14. Underline it, circle it. Be sure and read this before you go to bed tonight. The next morning, first time, the house was quiet. The morning after that, it was quiet. My dad was never loud in the morning again. Now, I say that to you just to say, I've challenged you to read Proverbs every day, but don't waste your time if you don't plan on making changes in your life, because every day you read Proverbs, you will see changes every day that you need to make. So I want to challenge you to be wise, and to do that, we have to have knowledge that's from above, but we have to be willing to allow that knowledge to transform our nature. It's been great to study with you today.